From the moment we were children, it was clear my younger sister and I lived under two entirely different sets of rules. I was the responsible one, the girl who did her homework without being asked, who helped with chores, who learned early to swallow her complaints because it made life easier for everyone. My sister, on the other hand, was the storm that no one dared to tame. If she cried, everyone rushed to soothe her. If she broke something, excuses were made before she could even open her mouth. "She's the baby," my parents would say, as if that explained everything. And so, while I was learning how to sacrifice, she was learning how to demand. Over the years, this imbalance became the foundation of our relationship. When I wanted the bigger bedroom, I was told to let her have it because she'd throw a fit otherwise. When she stole my clothes without asking, I was told to be nice, she looks up to you. Every slight, every unfair compromise became normal, almost expected. It was as if my role in the family was to absorb the chaos she created so she could remain the golden child. By the time we were adults, the pattern had hardened into something far more insidious. My parents still bent over backward for her, still urged me to just let it go whenever she crossed a line. And though I had carved out an independent life working long hours, saving carefully, and finally buying my own house, the shadows of those childhood dynamics never really left. Deep down, I think my sister believed the world still owed her everything she wanted. And the first, in particular, was the one meant to provide it. When her engagement was announced, the family celebrated as though royalty had declared a wedding. My mother immediately slipped into full party planner mode, while my father promised to make it the event of the decade. As for my sister, she basked in the attention. Posting constant updates on social media and reveling in the compliments about her ring, her dress, her fairy tale romance. I wanted to be happy for her, truly, I did, but even in those early days of planning, I could feel the pressure building. Every phone call seemed to come with another request. Could I help pay for extra flowers? Could I host a bridal shower at my house? Could I take time off work to drive her to fittings? If I hesitated, even for a moment, she'd pout or accuse me of not caring. And once again, my parents would step in. "It's her special time, don't make it about you." It was déjà vu, except now the stakes felt higher. Despite my private frustration, I kept showing up. I bit my tongue when she snapped at me during a cake tasting. I smiled through gritted teeth when she bragged about how her wedding would be the event everyone would remember for years. On the surface, I was the dutiful older sister, supportive and composed. But inside, resentment was building like pressure in a sealed jar. What I didn't know, then what none of us could have predicted, was that this wedding would become the stage for the most humiliating and defining moment of our relationship, and that the imbalance that had ruled our lives since childhood was about to collapse, violently and publicly in front of hundreds of people. But before that chaos erupted, there was the calm before the storm, a family preparing for a fairy tale wedding, a bride acting like a queen, and me still playing the part of the obedient sister, unaware that my refusal to bow this time would change everything. It started innocently enough, or at least it seemed to. My sister called me one evening, her voice syrupy sweet in the way it always was when she wanted something. "Hey, can we talk?" she asked. Those 4 words alone made me suspicious. My sister never just talked. She maneuvered, she extracted, she demanded. Still, I answered lightly, "Sure, what's up?" There was a pause, the kind of pause she used to build suspense, and then she said it. "I want your house." At first, I thought I'd misheard her. "Excuse me?" I asked, half laughing, waiting for her to reveal it was some kind of bizarre joke. But she didn't laugh. She didn't even blink. "I want your house," she repeated, this time slower. As if I were the one not grasping the obvious, the air went cold around me. My house wasn't just 4 walls and a roof. It was the culmination of years of relentless work late nights, skipped vacations, careful budgeting. It was my sanctuary, my one piece of independence in a family that had always taken and taken from me. And here she was, asking for it as casually as if she were borrowing a sweater. "You can't be serious." I said, my voice sharper now. "I'm completely serious," she replied. "Think about it, it makes perfect sense. You're single, you don't need all that space. And it would mean so much for me and her fiancé to start our life together in a real home, not some rented apartment. It's a win-win. You'd still have us in your life, and I wouldn't have to stress about buying a place. Her logic was breathtaking in its entitlement. She wasn't even offering to buy it. She wanted me to give her the house outright. Just sign it over like a hand-me-down, a gift from the responsible older sister to the pampered bride. No, I said firmly. Absolutely not. This is my home. The silence that followed was laced with disbelief, as if the very word no was foreign to her ears. She finally snapped, "Wow, I can't believe you'd be so selfish. You know how important this is to me. You've always had everything so easy, don't you think I deserve something too?" Easy, that word cut deeper than she knew. Nothing in my life had come easy, not the job, not the money, not the house. Every brick, every square foot was proof of sacrifices she had never had to make. And now she wanted to strip it all away because she thought marriage entitled her to it. I hung up the phone that night with my heart racing. I thought that would be the end of it. She'd pout, maybe yell, but eventually drop the idea. I underestimated her. Within days, the whispers started. My mother called, her voice tight with forced cheer. "Honey, maybe you should think about it. You know how your sister is, she just wants everything to be perfect for her marriage." Then came my aunt. "Would it really be so terrible? Your families make sacrifices." Even my father, usually quiet in these matters, sighed and said, "Maybe there's a way you can help her out. At least consider it." It was as if my refusal had set off a chain reaction, and suddenly I was the villain for protecting what was mine. My sister, meanwhile, acted as if the decision was already made. At gatherings, she dropped casual comments about paint colors she'd use, how she'd redecorate the living room, how the garden would be perfect for hosting summer parties. She even told her future in-laws that she and her husband would be moving into their new home soon. Each word chipped away at me, but I stayed firm. No became my mantra, even as my family tried to soften it, twist it, or erase it. For once in my life, I would not give in. What I didn't realize was that my refusal wasn't just defiance. It was gasoline poured on a fire that was already burning inside her. And the wedding day would be the spark that lit it. After that phone call, nothing in my family felt the same. My sister had drawn a line in the sand, and by refusing to give her what she wanted, I had crossed it. The strange part was, she didn't rage at me outright, not yet. Instead, she weaponized silence, pity, and carefully curated stories to turn the family into her personal army. At dinners, she would sigh dramatically, eyes misting, while my mother patted her hand. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" someone would ask, and my sister would look at me across the table with that smug, knowing expression. Then she'd whisper, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "I just wish everyone supported me the way I support them." The words were vague, but everyone knew what she meant. Eyes would flick to me, accusing, as though I had personally tried to sabotage her wedding instead of protecting my own home. It didn't take long for the whispers to spread beyond the family circle. Cousins, distant relatives, even family friends began approaching me with thinly veiled scolding. "You're her sister, don't you want her to be happy? A house is just bricks and wood, but a marriage is forever. She's about to start her new life, don't make it harder for her." Each time, I clenched my jaw and repeated the same words, "It's my house. I worked for it. I'm not giving it away." But it felt like no one actually heard me. They only heard her sob story about an older sister who wouldn't share her blessings. Meanwhile, my sister began acting as though the house was already hers. She spoke freely about where she would put the nursery, which wall she'd knock down for an open concept look, and how her husband was so excited to move into their forever home. When I confronted her privately, furious at her audacity, she simply shrugged and said, "It's easier this way. Everyone knows it'll happen eventually. You're just being difficult for no reason." It was surreal, like living in some twisted play where everyone else had agreed on a script and I was the only one who hadn't been given my lines. My house, my boundaries, my choices, none of it mattered. What mattered was maintaining the illusion of my sister's perfect wedding, her perfect life. And if that meant sacrificing me, then so be it. The tension bled into the smallest interactions. My mother stopped calling me just to chat. Every conversation circled back to my sister and finding a compromise. My father avoided me altogether, too weary to deal with the conflict. And my sister? She treated me with brittle politeness in public, but her eyes burned with the promise of retaliation. By the week of the wedding, the air was thick with hostility. The rehearsal dinner was a nightmare. She paraded around in her white dress, glowing with the smug certainty that she would get her way, while I sat at the edge of the room, ignored and whispered about. When I offered a toast to wish her and her fiancé happiness, she smirked and said into the microphone, "Maybe one day my sister will learn how to be generous too." The room chuckled politely. But I saw the flash of cruelty in her eyes. I realized then that she wasn't just angry about the house. She was furious that, for the first time in her life, I had told her no, and worse, I had stuck to it. She couldn't stand the thought of losing her power over me, but still, I underestimated her. I thought the tension would stay hidden in glances, whispers, and veiled comments. I thought she'd never dare to let her mask slip in front of the world. I was wrong. The wedding day was approaching, and with it, the explosion that would shatter everything. The morning of the wedding was deceptively beautiful. The sun rose into a cloudless sky, the kind of day brides dream about and photographers pray for. I remember standing outside the venue, smoothing my dress, trying to breathe past the knot in my chest. Everyone around me was buzzing with excitement, but I couldn't shake the unease coiled tight in my stomach. I told myself it was nerves that I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew better. Inside, the hall glittered with chandeliers and flowers. My parents had spared no expense, desperate to make this the event of the year. Guests swirled in silks and suits, murmuring compliments about how perfect everything looked. And there she was, my sister, the bride, in her cascading white gown, her smile as radiant as the diamonds pinned in her hair. To the world, she looked like the picture of happiness. To me, her smile carried an edge sharp enough to cut. At first, things went smoothly. The ceremony unfolded like a fairy tale, vows exchanged, tears shed, applause echoing through the hall. For a moment, I almost believed we might survive the day without a scene. But my sister never forgot a grudge, and she certainly wasn't about to forgive me for denying her dream home. The explosion came during the reception. It was in the middle of dinner, glasses clinking, people laughing, music filling the air. I had just lifted a forkful of food when I heard her voice, sharp, loud, carrying easily over the chatter. "So," she said, her gaze locking on me across the table, "when are you finally going to tell everyone you've decided to give us the house?" The room fell silent in an instant. All eyes turned to me. Heat surged up my neck and my fork clattered against the plate. "I haven't decided that," I said evenly, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Because I'm not giving you my house." Gasps rippled through the tables. My sister's face twisted, the bride's serene mask cracking wide open. "You're seriously going to embarrass me like this? At my wedding?" She snapped, her voice shrill with fury. I swallowed hard. "I'm not embarrassing you. I'm simply saying the truth. The house is mine. It's not up for discussion." The words seemed to ignite something primal in her. She stood, her gown billowing dramatically as she marched toward me. I could see the whispers starting, guests leaning into one another, phones slipping discreetly out to record. I stayed rooted in my chair, refusing to be bullied. And then it happened. In front of 200 people, in front of her groom, our family, her friends, she raised her hand and slapped me across the face. The sound cracked through the hall like a gunshot. My cheek burned instantly, but what hurt more was the humiliation. Gasps filled the air, followed by an avalanche of whispers. Someone dropped a glass. The groom surged to his feet, horrified. For a heartbeat, no one moved. My sister stood over me, chest heaving, eyes blazing with triumph and rage. She expected me to cry, to apologize, to finally bend. But instead I stood slowly, my face stinging, my dignity intact. Without a word, I turned and walked out of the reception hall, heels clicking against the marble floor. Leaving her and the wreckage of her perfect day behind me, chaos erupted. Guests argued, my mother wailed, The groom tried to calm his bride, who was now sobbing hysterically. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. For once, I chose myself. The wedding had promised to be the happiest day of her life. Instead, it became the day everyone saw her for who she truly was, and the day I finally stopped playing the role of the obedient sister. Walking out of that hall felt like tearing off invisible chains I'd been wearing my entire life. My face still burned from the sting of her hand, but strangely I felt lighter. For the first time, I had chosen dignity over obligation. Still, I knew the storm wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. The phone calls started the very next morning. My mother's number lit up my screen first, followed by half a dozen missed calls from aunts, uncles, and cousins. I didn't answer. I needed space, and more than that, I needed silence. But eventually I listened to one of the voicemails, her voice tight with a mix of panic and accusation. "You embarrassed your sister on her wedding day." She was under so much stress. "Couldn't you just have agreed, at least for the night?" Everyone's talking about it. Everyone was talking about it, all right. By the end of the week, the slap had become the family's favorite scandal. Some relatives expressed horror at my sister's behavior, whispering that she had gone too far. Others shook their heads at me, insisting I should have handled it better, as though my refusal to hand over a house justified public humiliation. My father's response was the most telling. He didn't call, didn't text, didn't even attempt to mediate. Instead, when I finally saw him days later, he simply sighed and muttered, "Why does it always have to be a fight?" Not once did he acknowledge that his youngest daughter had slapped his eldest in front of 200 witnesses. To him, the problem wasn't her violence or entitlement, it was the fact that I refused to keep the peace. As for my sister, she doubled down. Instead of apologizing, she leaned into her narrative, crying to anyone who would listen about how I had betrayed her. According to her, I had ruined her wedding day by being selfish and jealous. Her new in-laws were caught in the middle, visibly uncomfortable whenever her version of events surfaced. The groom himself looked exhausted, his smile strained. Rumor had it he confronted her about her behavior, but if he did, it didn't soften her stance. She was too busy playing the victim. The family began to fracture in ways I'd never seen before. A few relatives, my cousin Layla, my aunt Narration, reached out quietly to say they supported me. "She's always been like this," Layla whispered during one phone call. "Someone needed to stop her." Their words comforted me, but they also revealed the truth. Everyone had seen her entitlement for years, but no one had dared to challenge it. I had become the scapegoat simply because I finally drew the line. Meanwhile, my sister's marriage showed cracks far sooner than anyone expected. Guests had recorded the slap on their phones, and the videos circulated quietly in family group chats. Her husband, blindsided by the spectacle, reportedly asked her, "If you can do that to your sister in public, what else are you capable of?" The shine of the fairy tale wedding wore off quickly, replaced by gossip about screaming arguments and frosty silences between the newlyweds. Through it all, I stayed silent. I didn't retaliate, didn't spread my side of the story. I let the truth speak for itself. And in doing so, I realized something powerful. My sister had humiliated me, yes, but she had also exposed herself. For once, her manipulations weren't hidden behind closed doors. Everyone had seen her unmasked, and no amount of spin could erase the sound of that slap echoing through the hall. It hurt, of course. It hurt to lose what little family support I thought I had. It hurt to be painted as the villain for refusing to be robbed of the one thing I had built for myself. But it also felt like a rebirth. The chains had snapped, and I had no intention of putting them back on. The wedding was supposed to mark the beginning of her new life. Instead, it marked the beginning of mine. In the weeks after the wedding, my phone never stopped buzzing. Half the family wanted to lecture me, the other half wanted to quietly reassure me, and my sister, well, she alternated between silence and venom. Some days she sent texts filled with insults. "You ruined everything. Everyone hates you now. I hope you're happy." Other days she tried guilt. "You're my sister. How could you abandon me when I needed you the most?" But something inside me had shifted. For the first time in my life, her words didn't sink their claws into me. They slid off like water on glass. I realized I had lived too long under her shadow, bending myself into shapes that suited her, swallowing my voice so hers could be louder. The slap had hurt, yes, but it had also been a gift. It was the moment I finally saw the truth. No matter what I gave her, it would never be enough, so I stopped answering the late-night guilt calls. I stopped attending family dinners where I knew the conversation would circle back to her grievances. When relatives pressed me to make peace, I told them calmly, peace doesn't mean surrender. That line shocked them, me, the quiet, compliant daughter, finally refusing to play the peacemaker. Some didn't call back after that, and honestly, I didn't miss them. Instead, I poured myself into the life I had been too distracted to fully enjoy. I worked on my house not for her, but for me. I repainted the walls, bought furniture that reflected my taste, planted flowers in the garden. Every change felt like a declaration. This is mine, and I will not give it away. My home became more than just shelter. It became a symbol of my independence, a fortress against the entitlement that had suffocated me for years. At work, I stopped volunteering for every extra task, stopped saying yes out of habit. My coworkers noticed, and so did my boss. When a promotion opened, I applied without hesitation and got it. The raise wasn't just financial security. It was proof that I didn't need anyone's validation but my own. As for my sister, her perfect marriage began to crumble. Word trickled back to me through relatives, constant arguments, fights about money, even her in-laws stepping back after witnessing her outburst firsthand. The man who once looked at her with admiration now looked at her with doubt. I didn't gloat. Despite everything, she was still my sister, but I couldn't ignore the irony. She thought stealing my house would guarantee her happiness. Instead, she ended up with nothing but cracks in her foundation. Months later, when the dust had settled a little, I saw her at a family gathering. She looked tired, her smile forced, her eyes avoiding mine. For a fleeting second, I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who threw tantrums until the world gave in. Only now, she was a grown woman, and the world wasn't playing along anymore. She didn't apologize. I didn't expect her to. But she also didn't demand anything, and for me, that was victory enough. Standing there, surrounded by people who were finally beginning to see the truth, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The slap, the humiliation, the division, it had all been necessary. Because without it, I might never have found the courage to break free. This wasn't just about a house. It was about boundaries, respect, and finally claiming my right to exist without being consumed by someone else's wants. My sister's wedding was supposed to be the grand beginning of her story. Instead, it became the turning point of mine. And as I walked back into my home that evening, closing the door behind me, I realized something I'd never felt before: safe, unburdened, and completely free.